Hello good people and welcome back to Level Up Your ELO. Today is December 9th, 2024, and right now the most prestigious battle is happening in the professional chess world. And no, it's not Magnus Carlsen versus Hans Niemann. It's the 18-year-old phenom in Gukesh Domaraju versus Ding Liren. Ding Liren, who was defending the world classical title. Now Gukesh made history by being the youngest ever candidates winner at 17 years old. Whether he wins or loses, of course, being the world champion is a very prestigious and immortalizing title, we can't deny that Gukesh is on the road to greatness. I hope this game will be of some use to you. Let's boost that ELO. Let's get it!
Round one, fight!
So this game took place in 2019 during the Sunway Sitges International Open in Spain. Gukesh D rated 2547. I was about to say only 2547, which is still amazing for his age. Plays against Makan Rafia, rated 2355. Oh, before we begin, before I forget, if you do like this content, find it tolerable, it's helping your chess development, please leave a like and sub. You have my gratitude. Let's get started. Alright guys, let's get started. Gukesh starts with knight to f3, the Zukertort ready opening. Knight to f6 by the opponent. Both these guys, rather white wants a positional setup. G3, ideas to fianchetto and then castle fast. D5, the opponent strikes to center. Bishop to G2, E6. You can see all the pawns are aimed at the queen side. Castle king, bishop to E7, D3. Now the idea is to open up the dark square diagonal, put the knight on D2, push on E4 or likely E1 with the rook. Ideas. Castle king, both sides have completed development. Knight b to d2, c5. Again striking this side of the board in the center, because white played conservatively, kind of reserving the energy of the pieces by not pushing the center yet. Speaking of not pushing the center yet, white pushes in the center, and the idea is, one, to take over these squares, but also to applying central tension. When you've established king safety, now you apply central tension. Knight to c6, rook to e1, and we have b5. Now, as you can see, the setup is the pawn structure is aimed at the queen side for black, and the pawn structure for white is aimed at the king side. So who will win? In these kind of setups, we shall see. E5. Now that's a committal move. The idea is to take over d6 and f6. Mind you, pushing pawns way past the 4th rank means they need to be defended. It's quite territorial here. And if they're not defended carefully, well, you could lose them. Losing central pawns, especially in Grandmaster games, is, yeah, it's not good. It's heavy. It's a blunder. And here the idea is knight to f1, rerouting the knight, but also this will need defense, because if it gets attacked, it will be lost. So, queen to c7, bishop to f4. b7. Black has completed development, white has completed development. What is the plan here for white? Do you attack with a4, undermining the pawn there? Or do you, in this fashion, play h4, which Gukesh does. He attacks the g5 square once, twice, 3 times, but that's not just the plan here. If the idea is you're aiming at the king side, well then, I'll explain what I mean in a couple moves. Rook f to c8, h5. You toss this like an angry, aggressive ant, just about ready to kind of ruin your opponent's pawn structure. And when I say pawn structure, I mean these pawns. Right? You push it, you create weaknesses in dark squares. If it's taken, then the king is open in the g-file, and you double the king side. h6. It's a provocation. Usually, either you allow the opponent to go to h6. This would create dark square weaknesses. In this case, with this push, this pawn is now stuck on h6. Pawns cannot be pushed backwards, either en passant or forward. Knight to e3, rerouting. Queen to d8. Black is also wary and understands that the king is kind of alone. All the major and minor pieces are in this quadrant of the board. We can't have that. So queen to d8. And now Gukesh, playing conservatively a while ago and focus on the king side, strikes with c4. What to do here? Of course, if you play, say, a d4, then you simply have a knight to g4. And this kind of locks the position, but it does not work on black's favor easily because there is a pawn right here controlling d5 and there's a diagonal. It's not fatal or anything, but say after takes and takes, and after d4 we have this knight to g4 rerouting. If you'll notice, the pawn here is pretty decently strong. The idea is also that a lot of Gukesh's forces are at the king side, just protecting the pawn a couple times. And then you got f6, and then you got h6, and it's also aimed at, and I'm drawing as many hikaru's, or rather arrows as hikaru. Bishop to f8, just backing out and protecting the squares here. Knight to d2. And another reroute, the idea is to take this nice square, this nice central square on e4, and now there's better control over the center there on d6 and f6. Rook c to b8, and now knight to e4. Knight to e7. Again, a decent reroute for the opponent. But here, the idea now is, well, what's the idea, essentially? What does Gukesh do here in this position? Now that it's kind of quiet, the machine Stockfish 16, a supercomputer of all available free-to-use supercomputers, what does a human do here, logically speaking? And Gukesh plays b4. Exclamation point, it's a good move. Is it sacrificing a pawn? Possibly, or not. It's attacking the root pawn c5. These pawns are called hanging pawns, and to weaken their control of the center is you attack their supporting pawns, so the pawn in front, the pawn that's overextended, becomes weaker. And in this fashion, takes and queen takes. Now you're probably wondering, I don't have to touch that pawn. I can do the exchange first, and then take. And Gukesh likely looked at it, takes on e4, rook takes, and visualizing this, it looks like all is well. But you have to understand that this bishop is passive. White now has a double bishop pair, and in open or semi-open positions, or in positions that are about to open up, you can sacrifice a pawn for activity, and what better activity than two bishops on the board? So, if you look at this position, two bishops are unleashed. This light-squared diagonal bishop is very strong. It is unchallenged. The opponent does not have a bishop pair. White does have a bishop pair. And after, say, a bishop to d3, again, just defending here, because you don't want to give too many pawns. Knight to f5, reroute. And you're probably wondering, are these computer moves? Yes, they are, but also they are logical moves, because if you have control of a bishop that's eyeing h7, you should take advantage of it. In fact, any threat that you can create, whether or not it's a checkmating threat or it's any threat to improve your position, you should consider. Not immediately, but consider the threat. Sometimes the threat is greater than execution. And some of these lines, this is what makes you a stronger player. You don't immediately take a piece or a square, but consider what they can do. And in this position, if after b4 exchange rook takes, this is what likely will have happened. White has a bit of command in the light squares, has control of d6 and f6, and yes, these are strategic ideas, but it's nice to know as a developing player what these ideas are, even at the higher levels. But anyways, b4. I'm explaining that line too much. After b4, c takes d, queen takes d, and now it's cleared up a bit. Cleared up a bit, being there are no central pawns. The tension's kind of relieved. This is opening up. It's quite open now. And then the opponent plays knight to f5. And I'm just going to pause there because I'd like you to have a look at the position. What did Gukesh play here? And spoiler alert, it was a brilliant move, and I hope you can find it. I'll leave you guys 3, 2, 1. Hope you paused it, because I'm unpausing it. Gukesh played queen takes on d7. Double exclamation point. That is a brilliant move. See the square? Not only is it attacked 3 times, but it's also where the king can be checked. So, after takes, knight to f6, g takes, knight 2. Of course, you don't really want to go there. In the essence of the endgame, that's too far away from the center. So king goes to g7. After takes, takes. Now you take with tempo. This is still hanging, emprise. So essentially, that capture with the check wins a piece for Gukesh in exchange. And mind you, having the light square diagonal is still deadly, but white is up to exchange, and guess what? He has the center, and guess what? What else? You have the c4 pawn, which is a passed pawn. After takes, or rather knight to d7, bishop, and bishop to e3, eyeing this diagonal, rook to c8, rook a to c1 defense, and now takes. And here, you're probably wondering, okay, what should I take in this position? Should I ruin my structure? Gukesh takes with the pawn, doubling the pawn, but the idea here is he has access to the f-file. And these are one of those things where chess rules are not absolute. Garry Kasparov once said, you learn principles in chess, and when you get so good at them, you can break them. Here, bishop to c6. Of course, that's kind of the only sensible square. You can't go here or anywhere. So after takes, check, king takes. You have this idea, which is actually recommended by the machine. Gukesh does not waste time with that. He knows he can use that later. King to f2, rook to g8, and now Gukesh takes the open file. And I want you guys to pay attention because this is where technique comes in. Looking at the position, white has the passed pawn on c4, and maybe a passer there. That's an extended pawn. What to do, what to do. That pawn is attacked, so you attack something else. Because after this move, you have this idea of, say, g4, which is what's played in the game. a5. Now, does black have counterplay? Well, yeah, if white is just a tad bit careless, these pawns can roll, and heads will roll, as in rating points. Figuratively, there is no death in chess, hopefully, maybe in chess boxing, but that's besides the point. Rook to d8. Controlling the back rank, but there is another insidious plan here. If you can see it later, black should play king to e7, just booting that thing away. And say after rook to h8, a4. Remember, I told you guys, it's a race. Chess is a race, of course. Then you have to consider that, because if you takes here, it rolls. After push, 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 check with tempo there. In the game, though, after rook to d8, the opponent kind of underestimated the threat of this, and the threat of h5. And of course, if you take here, you lose a piece, but that is not the point. The point is there is an absolutely monstrously brilliant move that Gukesh plays. I'm not even going to ask you guys to find it. It does not look exciting, but in retrospect, if you study endgames, it's super powerful, and that move is rook to g8. And I'm going to pause there just a bit, because you're like, that's an okay move. Why is that so good? What is wrong with you? The whole point of rook to g8 is to cut off this and create play so that, well, I'm actually going to label that as brilliant, so that while this is hanging, if you do any like crazy shenanigans like bishop to c4, then the game is essentially over. The evaluation jumps to 5. So now you have g5. You can't take with the king. You have to take here. You're busy defending that bishop. So if takes, you just march. And after check, doesn't matter. You try. Because now g8, the king cannot come to the 8 here. And now you have to open check and then lose another exchange. And basically you lose the game. So rook to g8. Insane. This idea of a pin does not work. So now bishop to e4. The opponent is not a patzer. Is 200 points less, but is not a patzer. King to e2. King to e7 finally. The king marches. And now pushes his pawn. Why is that? The rule of two weaknesses. He created two weaknesses with his pawn. So after takes, pushes. Blocks, gives a check. And here the opponent resigns. The opponent resigns because of the super technical line, but I just want to show you how good Gukesh is, even at this age. I don't know, I think he was 16 or 15. This is some super grandmaster stuff. After rook to f1, king has to move, and now you attack this. This being the bishop. It will be lost because next move comes with tempo. And you might be wondering, after this crazy g5 move, what if rook took? Then you have this check. You capture, and now push. The rule of two weaknesses. This rook is not just 2 points better than the bishop currently, but you have two raging passed pawns, and the game is essentially over. Yeah, that's it, man. It's such technical, it's like little Magnus level technicality. Alright guys, quick recap. Knight to f3, knight to f6, the Zucker Tortoretti opening, g3, d5, bishop to g2, e6, castle king, bishop to e7. You had d3, castle king, knight to d2, then e4, attacking the middle, committal move, reroute to defend with f4. Defend if your pawn is, or rather, be wary of pushing pawns too far, knowing that they need to be defended. Defense, and now h4. The action happens at the queen side, the action here happens at the king side. Chucking this pawn like an aggressive ant, ready to just destroy the king side. Queen reroutes, the king might need backup. Striking the center, takes, so many lines. Reroute, when you have a nice wedge pawn, when you have central control, reroute. Knight to e4, knight to e7, b4. b4, not brilliant, but strong move. Again, do you want to take? Take, rook takes, queen to f3, you lose in a dynamic position by your upper pawn, or you take, and then you blunder, or rather you make a mistake. After takes, the brilliant knight to f6 comes with tempo, attacking the rook. If you move, you lose it, so it takes up the exchange. You take with this, you break the rule, you have access to the f file if you need it. Takes, and now counterattack. This is attack, you can't push, this gets lost. Hit here first, they defend, now you push. Race against time, rook to d8, this is a better defense. Opponent tries to think tactically, but then you have this superb rook to g8. Move, pushes. Whatever you take with, you pick your poison, it's still poison. Takes, and push. In this position, the opponent resigned. Again, with king to e7, this is a goner. And if we go back, if you take here, then rook to f1 check, takes, you have to defend against these two monsters and a rook that just wants to crush your soul. In any case, I hope you guys got something out of that. I know I did. It's very technical. It's not flashy. It's not the tactics supreme that we all know and like from like Veruja and Orikaru, but it's super technical and it's practical. Anyways, I'll see you guys later. Double P's.